Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Coffee at Rosevine Cottage. I am so glad you're here with us this week. Take a moment, grab a cup of coffee, and then we're going to dive right in. We've all been there. Everything was golden, and then all of a sudden a storm popped up on your radar. You weren't expecting it, didn't see it coming, and now we're here trusting God in the storm and just trying to find the strength to draw in another breath. Trusting God while you are trying to weather the storm can be overwhelming. Everything in us screams for answers, desperate to find solid ground in the midst of the storm. Storms are something that we all go through, both physically and spiritually. Some of them are just mere blips that come and go so quickly and are forgotten. But others forever change the landscape of our lives. They uproot dreams and scatter our hopes far away. Their harshness leaves us gasping to catch our breath as our world crumbles around us. How do you keep trusting God in the storm when all seems lost and you don't know how you're going to keep going? Trusting God is something we hear a lot about as Christians. But what about when we find ourselves in a storm and we know that He could have kept it away from us? And yet here we are, reeling in the brutality of the storm, trying to gather the broken pieces, to find healing and make sense of it all. I remember a moment I was sitting in church after one of the worst days of my life. My heart was beyond crushed. I sat there in the darkness of the auditorium feeling like I could barely breathe. I was hurting, I was angry. I wanted answers. I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I was broken, beyond broken. I felt like my whole life was shattered into so many pieces that it could never be put back together, and yet as I sat there, music washed over my battered soul like the waves of an ocean, washing away a bit of the anger, soothing a fraction of the pain. God met me there. At that moment, like a giant warm hug, slowly I could breathe again. I didn't understand, but I found a peace in that moment that I didn't need to understand. I just had to keep trusting Him. Despite the pain, despite the heartbreak, despite the dreams that had been lost, that lay dashed across the ground without a chance of being restored. I knew He had a plan, and that even in the midst of the storm, God was still with me. Despite the storm, He is still good, and He is still God. Despite my pain, my confusion, my heartbreak, He is still worthy of my trust. He didn't change, just my perspective changed. He is still in control, still God in the storm, still has a plan, even though I can't understand. He has already seen this spot and worked out the provision for this season. Trusting God in the storm may feel counterintuitive when everything in you wants to know why He allowed you to walk into this place. But it's at this moment we need to trust God more than ever. It's far easier to trust God on the mountaintop when life is smooth sailing, but we aren't called to just trust God when life is good. We have to trust God in all circumstances, on the good days and on the bad, when we feel like we could touch the stars and when we have to drag ourselves out of bed in the morning. It is so important that we remember that God does not change. Only our perspective does. He has never abandoned us, never lost us, never walked away. Throughout scriptures, we see the promise that God will not abandon us in any circumstances. When you are in the midst of the storm, He will not leave you there. You will not be lost in this place. He has not left you. You aren't too broken or messy or anything else the devil has tried to whisper in your ears to get you to give up. Even in the midst of the storm, you are held firmly in His grasp, and He is worthy of your trust. Trusting God is important every day of our lives, but it's in the face of the storm that we must cling all the tighter to that trust, even when we don't understand, even when the storm is raging, even when we are hurting. God does not change in the storm. But through the lens of our pain, of unanswered questions and heartache, it can feel like He does. We have to remember that our feelings aren't always right, and remind ourselves that even in the storm, God is in control. Trust God in the storm. He's got you even in the darkest moments of your heartache. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this episode blessed you. Make sure you join us again, same time next week for another episode of Coffee at Rosevine Cottage. We'll see you there.